we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Cynthia Sims, and we're thrilled to have you here. So we're going to be talking about the Complexity Leadership Certificate. And the purpose of the certificate is to really help to grow your capacity and leadership in LLOD. So it really is a scholarly approach to research and practice, and it's designed to help you with your own learning and development. It can also, of course, help you with the learning and development of people and organizations, and well as one of the goals is to support a more equitable and just society. We're going to start with the welcome. So we'll have everybody introduce themselves quickly using the chat function. We're going to talk a little bit about the Complexity Leadership Certificate. The bulk of our time will be with Sarah Wadlow Jones, who is a recent graduate of the Complexity Leadership Certificate, and then get any questions that you may have answered. So if everyone would go ahead and do a 2-word check-in so that we can get to the bulk of the activities. So go ahead and let's do a 2-word check-in. Thanks one and all. It's nice to meet you. Oh, and by the way, I'm Cynthia Sims. I'm been here a year, so if I haven't met you, I look forward to it. I'm glad you're here today. I'm an associate professor focusing on leadership as well as organizational development. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep going. So we're going to have just make sure, yep, a Q&A session. So if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask Sarah Jones, please go ahead and put those in chat. We have some that we've compiled ourselves, more sort of general interest, but if you have more specific things, please feel free to put that in chat and then we'll get to your questions. So these are the faculty that are part of the leadership complexity leadership certificate. You just met Dr. Lundgren and Dr. Nicolaides and myself, and of course we have the fabulous Dr. Karen Watkins as well. So with that, we're going to really talk about the Complexity Leadership Certificate. It's been reimagined. The goal really is to look at cutting edge practices and scholarship. This program is informed by UGA's faculty's research on adult development, along with adaptive and complexity leadership. And so really, one of the reasons why we're looking at a leadership certificate is that, as we all know, you can just open up anything in the newspaper today online. You know, things are volatile, they are uncertain, they are complex, and we see a lot of ambiguity. And so when you have these circumstances, you really need to lead with a different approach, a different mindset. And so the role really requires discernment as well as timely action. And so the goal is to help prepare you for that. And so I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Nicolaides.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I'll just build on what you are already sharing with us, but maybe a little bit of history could be helpful in that when we started the lab, which was really during the pandemic, where, you know, everything that we assumed was working, you know, as well as it could, really wasn't, and various events illuminated sort of the shadows or the gaps. And one of the gaps was that the way in which we kind of have traditionally done leadership has been still very oriented towards a leader doing things on behalf of an organization or a larger system or a community or a nation state. The idea being that there is this someone able to manage the challenges ahead and just organizes or orients, you know, good humans to respond to that, you know, problem. But we realized that 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 old model that's based on, you know, a kind of military or bureaucratic or historically hierarchical model. And even though over the past 150 years, leadership theory has evolved and we have more critical perspectives, and we certainly have challenged this approach, the approach towards how do we really engage complexity started to become one more seriously taken up by various researchers and theory builders. You know, sometime in the, you know, just before like mid 2000s, like as we were entering the first decade of 2000. And our program, our field, which is a practice-oriented field, orients itself to how learning and leadership, specifically learning and leadership, can actually make change happen, right? In a variety of contexts with a variety of players. And we've started to say, you know, instead of us just critiquing leadership theory, which is sort of what most of us do as faculty, we thought, let's create our own, you know, our own approach and let's see what happens. So this is the vision of the certificate was, can we prepare leaders to encounter complexity in ways that aren't traditional, in ways that really challenge the assumptions of what we think leader or leaderliness or leadership is all about. And that's kind of what we're about. And our courses and our developmental approach is here to help develop your capacity to be in relationship with what's called wicked problems in the general, you know, milieu. With a different kind of way of knowing and doing and being. And so with that in mind, our mission really is to create the conditions for you as future leaders or current leaders to play with and practice applying new leadership mindsets, new tools for encountering complexity, and ways to work with that complexity that includes working with so many people who complexity affects, right? So we talk about this as the enactment of, or the operationalization of ways of knowing, doing, and being that will meet the complexity in real time. I think I've spoken to this already, but I think it's important that we maybe amplify the idea is that when we use what we mean by complexity is that there is a inherent interdependence, meaning that there's a kind of assumption we hold from a complexity mindset that connections, relationships, interactions, human and more than human subjects matter to how change happens, to how leadership is enacted. And so immediately you can imagine that challenges the conventional ideas of leadership by character, leadership by trait, leadership by emotions, leadership by service, leadership by women, right? Like there's not this monolithic thing called leadership. Now we want to break open the box and say complexity helps us see into and through some of the assumptions that really haven't served leaders when they encounter complexity. So we're excited about that. And one of the theories that both Cynthia and I particularly, but also Dr. Watkins and Dr. Lundgren also agree, I think, is that of the leadership, the pantheon of leadership theories, some of the more provocative or, you know, practice-oriented theories come with this idea of adaptive leadership, or the ability to work in multiple levels of a system in different ways across hierarchies, in fact, crossing the boundaries of systems, crossing the roles and positionalities, and really opening up the field for action in ways that are about more flexibility and more flow, more connections, more relationships, and more spontaneous responses. So that's what we mean by the adaptive leadership lens. So who will benefit? We think you're going to benefit as our students, as leaders of change already, as leaders already in positions of authority, as potential care oriented towards making new approaches to deal with really complex challenges, whether they're in our organizational spaces, in our community spaces, in our social spaces. This complexity has become ubiquitous, we might say, and it's no longer something out there, but we are in it. And if we're in it, how do we learn to think and act and relate in new ways that allow us to take leadership up in meaningful, pragmatic, thoughtful, conscious, inclusive, and transformative ways?
All right, thank you. So I'll go through some of the nuts and bolts. So you've got the curriculum. So essentially the program consists of 15 core courses. Most of those are in leadership. You have the opportunity to take one elective. You can see the list there. I think what is different is that the core curriculum, there's what we call the leadership practicum. This course is in the process of being created, but it will provide you with an opportunity to take what you have learned, the curriculum, and essentially do an independent project. And so this would be something that you would work with either Dr. Nicolaides or myself, and you take a topic and you essentially work through that, and I'm happy to talk more about that. Most of the curriculum, it can be done online. Some of it you need to be in Athens, but the goal is for the next academic years to have it be totally virtual so that you can do it virtual. In terms of the requirements, you need to have a graduate degree unless you're already enrolled in a graduate program here at UGA. You can see the GPA is 3.0. You need to have the approval of your major professor for current students, and then a transcript, resume, statement of purpose for their graduate school. We are capping the certificate enrollment at 20. I think right now we have 10 students who are enrolled in the program currently, and we're in the process of completing enrollment for the fall term. It is a rolling admission. You can be admitted every term. So just want you to be aware of that. In terms of next steps, you can complete the UGA. For existing UGA students, there's a certificate website, and I can put this in chat for you. New UGA students, you can apply through the graduate school at their website. So I will add both of those to chat. And with that, what I'd like to do is to go to our guest speaker. So we have Sarah Wadlong Jones, and she has been kind enough to join us. She is Director of Client Services at the University of Georgia's Enterprise Information Technology Services. She leads a team of 23 full-time IT professionals. She has over 23 years of service to the university, made many significant contributions in the IT space, and she has in 2010, she and her colleagues were honored as Computer World's Honor Program laureates for their project, The Right Prescription for Distance Education. In 2020, she also collaborated with Dr. Young on a grant, The Fishers of Men on the Road to Health, to establish a distance learning and telemedicine network in the rural South Georgia minority churches. Sarah holds a BA in English and a Master's in Education in LLOD, as well as a graduate certificate in transformative leadership from the University of Georgia. And so that is the certificate program, Complexity Leadership, that we have now. It has continued to evolve over time. And so her areas of interest include emotional intelligence, social network analysis, which she is more than happy to discuss, complex adaptive leadership. And so she collaborated with Dr. Beth Woods on the topic of new direction, fostering leadership growth in IT. which explores strategies for developing adaptive leadership skills in the rapidly changing world of IT. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and have Sarah share some responses to these questions as well as those that you may have. So she can talk a little bit of why she went ahead and completed her certificate in complexity leadership. She could talk a little bit about the focus of her project, how she has benefited from the certificate, and maybe share a little bit about what others might need to know who are considering or are enrolled in the certificate. And so we'll just open it up, Sarah, and then we'll see what other questions the participants may have for you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Sims, and thank you for inviting me to talk about my experience in the Transformative Leadership Certificate, which is now the Complexity Leadership. I think the fun fact about that is that when I was completing the Transformative Leadership Certificate, it was actually in the process of changing the name to the Complexity Leadership. So, I mean, really what I have is a Complexity Leadership Certificate, but in name, it is technically a Transformative Leadership Certificate. But I will say that Dr. Nicolaides was graciously allowed me to enter into the certificate program toward the end of my master's degree program. I was very much interested in doing the certificate because it did align with classes that I had taken in my master's degree program. And I was able to really build upon the knowledge that I had gained in my master's degree program to use in an applied practicum for complexity leadership. The idea for my practicum really kind of was born out of a couple of different areas. The adaptive leadership class that I took with Dr. Nicolaides and the last summer of my program, I did my LLOD capstone in emotional intelligence in IT professionals. I was very much interested in understanding how emotional intelligence existed in the space of IT professionals. And also out of a special project that I did when I was in my organizational development class, which was situated around social network analysis and how using social network analysis could be used to harness information through an organization. So with that, I was able to kind of take a couple of areas of interest, of scholarly interest to me, and develop a practicum that I was able to apply in my professional context here at EITS at the University of Georgia. And what I was interested in learning in my practicum was, could you do social network analysis and within an organization, and what could you learn about a social network analysis that could be applied to developing leaders in a complex adaptive space? And I don't want to like prattle on about things that aren't very interesting or might be interesting to you guys at a later date, but not right now. But the process of going through that really helped me to apply some of the scholarly learnings that I had learned through my master's degree program in a very, very practical way. And as I was telling Dr. Sin and Sung Yun right before we started, it is not a project that has gone away for me. So this is actually a living practicum project for me. I actually just presented on this topic to our Managers Advisory Board about 2 weeks ago. From that little presentation, which was really geared more towards the social network aspect of my project, I was asked to present at a mentorship council panel in the next few weeks to talk about the process of doing a social network analysis. But, ultimately what I was really interested in this practicum was, could I identify informal connectors within my organization, people who were not in positional leadership, and if in identifying those individuals, could we gather those people and develop them as complex adaptive leaders? And how could that change relationships and networking within our organization? So to me, I found it to be immensely helpful in my professional practice to go through the process of this practicum. Some of the things that I was able to learn were not necessarily what I intended to learn when I started out the practicum, but I learned a lot about, how my organization actually viewed leadership development. So when I presented it to my senior leadership team, I was able to get some feedback from those individuals that was kind of different than what I was anticipating. And that, for me as a leader, I was like, okay, so my work is cut out for me even more so than I anticipated. So I think sometimes you think that when people rise to a certain level of leadership with an organization, you're kind of all on the same page and you kind of all understand the same things about leadership. And I think what you find when you rise through organizations is that is not at all true. And the idea that you actually can be the one to bring about change within an organization is a powerful thing to actually be able to view, through the context of a project like this. So for me, the certificate program, as much as I absolutely foundationally value everything that I learned through my master's degree program, the certificate program really kind of was like the cherry on top of my scholarly learning in that process. So for me, and again, I think your mileage may vary depending on where you are in your programs, or if you're wanting to take this certificate, all in and of itself. For me, I believe it was like an extra semester worth of work. And for me, that was worth that additional time. It was worth it to kind of put off my graduation date in my master's degree program so that I could do this, this practicum, this certificate, and graduate with both of those at the same time. So I've probably given you more information than you want, but is there any questions that I can answer for you, or can I explain a little bit more about like what my project looked like? The second one, Rebecca, you want to know more about what my project looked like? You don't even have to unmute. I could see it. So, so for my project, what I did was, like I said, I was interested in, and I have to apologize, they shut the air off in my office and it is now 76 degrees and rising. So if I look like I'm like red in the face, it's because I literally am. So that's how much, how important you guys are to me, that I'm going to be in my office, sweating it up tonight. So the context of my project, I work in IT. I work with a lot of IT and professionals. Through the course of my capstone project, I did a thing on emotional intelligence for IT professionals. And I know this is going to surprise everybody, but it turns out that IT professionals tend not to be very social people for the most part. So the whole crux of my capstone project was the development of emotional intelligence in IT professional leaders, because that's a skill that tends to be lacking within IT professionals, and how developing those skills at an early point in their career could help them as they rise through the career of leadership. So now you have this kind of basis of IT leadership. And now I'm like, okay, well, like, how do you identify those leaders within your organization? I learned about social network analysis. And if you're not familiar with social network analysis, basically it is surveying of your social network within an organization or within a community construct to find out how people are interconnected with one another. So I had a very simple survey that I made up for my social network analysis, and it was 2 questions. And it was, let's see, This is why I actually pulled up my presentation. You know, who do you go to for help or work-related advice? And what is your current unit within the organization? So I was really curious to find out where people lived within the organization and who they connected with across the organization. That's not a true social network analysis. You know, a true social network analysis would really get that, like, that information back and forth. It would not be an anonymously constructed survey. That way that you can really understand better the strength of the connections that are made. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers when you have people who are suspicious about, like, organizational motives for asking questions. And this was just a practicum. And maybe if I go on to get a PhD someday, I can actually, like, do this more properly through IRB and all that. But so what I was really, like, hoping to find was which groups within the organization were highly connected, or who was connecting with certain individuals within the organization. And my hope was, by identifying highly connected, informal employees, that those people could be pulled out of the mapping, and then we could kind of work with them to develop leadership. And then I did so I did the social network mapping, collected all the data. It sounds like it was a lot of work, and maybe it was, but I enjoyed doing it, so it wasn't that bad. So I did the survey, I collected the data, I plugged the data into a mapping program, a systems mapping program called Kumu, which was inexpensive and easy to use. And let me see, I wonder if I can share this with you guys. So yeah, it's not turned on anyway, but I can share if anybody wants it later. I was able to develop these maps, this kind of map of individuals and where they were. And then I presented that information to my senior leadership team to get their feedback. And their feedback was really, and what I learned from this process was really the outcome of the practicum. So I don't want anyone to assume that the social network analysis was the outcome of the practicum. The outcome of the practicum was what I learned through the process of doing this, like, data analysis, and what I learned through my organization and presenting this to them. And that was what was actually really interesting. If for those who were in my presentation, they may recall that the takeaway that I actually took was that I ended up with results that I didn't expect. So, like, I had this idea, and I was like, yeah, we're going to pull out these people. But what I really learned was that my organization was not in a space, a mindset to think about leadership from a complex adaptive space. So we could all agree that IT is complex, but were we an adaptive organization? No. The people that I was talking to, they could agree that we were in an adaptive organization. So the outcome of my practicum was like, oh, well, the thing that I really wanted to learn was, like, how do I develop these internal leaders, actually turned into how do we promote adaptive practices through the organization. And that was a real fundamental takeaway, and that I found very fascinating, because I think a lot of times you get into doing some sort of experiment and you're hoping that the outcome is going to be the hypothesis that you're going in with it. And I actually found it much more interesting that my hypothesis almost failed, almost failed. So to me, in my practice, what it meant to me was, I was like, I need to find ways within my organization to start small, find some small changes that I can affect within the organization. And maybe that's just like doing my presentation, right? Like, let's talk about how do we build social networks within our organization, and kind of like feed on the energy. Let's try to feel like where the energy is taking us, and how do we develop leadership from those practices. And like I said, it's something that I'm using still to this day. It's a topic and a process I think about a lot. And I think even though it's been a year, I mean, I'm starting to see some of the fruits of the conversations that I've had within the organization from the outcomes of doing this practicum, which is pretty cool. does that help, or is that a little still so abstract? Do you need to know more of a, I mean, ultimately what I did was I did a social network analysis. I did a presentation for Dr. Nicolaides, and then I did a reflection paper. So that was the entirety of my practicum. So just to get to the brass tacks of what are you going to have to do, and you guys might change that. Their experience might be different from mine, but ultimately that was my experience.
Sarah, you've done a great job. Thank you so much for sharing. Any other questions for Sarah? I want to be respectful of you all's time as well as hers. All right.
Can I ask a quick question? So, like, is there any specific course you really think it benefited your study, or particularly on your project you just introduced us?
So I mean, taking Dr. Nicolaides' adaptive leadership class, is that what are you still doing the adaptive leadership class? Yeah. That was really helpful in order to think about leadership from the adaptive theory point of view. You know, my cohort ended up not taking the career development class, which, you know, I may end up trying to figure out a way to come back and take that, even if it's just that one class. But we did do a class on emotional intelligence that was obviously foundational, since that ended up being the cornerstone of my capstone project. I think the OD class was really, really good in getting me acquainted with the topic of social networking or social network analysis. I mean, there were so many beneficial classes in my master's degree program, all small pieces that like added to the place that I ended up getting to. But I do think that the adaptive leadership class was really helpful in starting to think about how do you actually frame the problem, and how do you think about ways that you could apply it within your organization? Where are the places that you can start to kind of maybe chip away at or bend. We talk about bending the frame. Like we want to kind of, we don't want to break the frame. We want to just like start bending the shape of the organization. And that could be, I mean, that can be, you know, it's funny because it can be really small things. I think people underestimate like how the small changes can usher in bigger change, bigger cultural change. I mean, even if it's something like, you know, we're gonna put some plants in the waiting room, just to kind of give it like a more like hospitable, open, welcoming communal place to be. How do we open up opportunities for people to come together and like share their experiences and talk to one another, and how can leaders listen to what's happening at the levels below them? Like, how can you know, raise up the voices from people who are in your leadership line to change the culture, right? To try to figure out what places to fix the or bend the frame. Sorry.
Give you a moment to get your water. Thank you so much for that response and that question, Dr. Yang, and Sarah's response. Other questions before we wrap up? Or comments, Dr. Nicolaides, anything you'd like to share?
I think that, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing what you have. Sarah and I share a kind of cultural background together. She's of Armenian extraction, and I am of Palestinian Greek extraction. So our lineages connect in a volatile part of the world right now. So we often talked about volatility in cooking, which we've seemed to do at the same time. But I wanted to also share that, you know, I think one of the things that we're also attempting to do in the complexity, in this particular this way of working through a certificate program, is to really strengthen the relationship between big ideas and big thinking, which is really important, and then trying things in the micro spaces that you can, right? So our expectations are for you to take these big, weird ideas and just play with them in action, right? And I think that's really that's the magic of an applied project in this particular context. So I think Sarah did a beautiful job with that and made some like really interesting, important, discoveries that I think are clearly, facilitating some new moves in her work. So.
And I should add, it was fun. I mean, it was fun. I mean, I know that sometimes in our scholarship, it's a kind of like we're grinding through like classes and papers and articles and stuff like this, but this was actually like very gratifying and fun for me to do. So, I mean, hopefully, if you decide to go for a certificate in this space, that you will find something fun to attach to it too.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, and especially in a place that doesn't have air conditioning.
Yeah, it's 76. The thermostat says 76, and that maybe not doesn't sound so hot, but when your office door is closed, it's thank you for inviting me to share my experience. If anybody has any questions that they think about later that they might want to ask, I'm reachable by email. I'll just type my email address into the chat, swjones@uga.edu, and happy to talk to anybody a little bit more about my experience. So thank you so much.
Well, we really appreciate you, and best wishes. It sounds like this is the gift that has kept giving, and I'm so glad you're excited about it, and well done. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. So I'll go ahead and share and finish up, and we will say good evening to everyone. So just in terms of getting in touch, feel free to reach out to me, Cynthia Sims at UGA, if you have questions about the certificate program. Why don't, if we wouldn't mind, if everybody would turn their camera on, we will do a quick Zoom where we will do a print screen of everybody. So if Dr. Yang could change the settings so that
Sure.
we can see people like the old Grady Bunch, the windows.
Yeah,
And
I think could you stop the screen sharing?
yes, I thought I
Yes.
had, but I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, you're fine.
Oh, I see it. Okay, too many screens open. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I will change the setting. Sorry. Click. View. Everybody can see equally. Okay, I will take a screenshot. So
Not
in-
yet. It's still.
oh, it's still.
Mhm.
Oh, from my screen it looks
Everyone
same.
looks good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It's
do that.
equally. Yeah, okay. I will take a picture. Please say 1, 2, 3, cheese.
Mhm.
Now I can do it. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay.
1, 2, 3, cheese.
Mhm.
I think I did.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, one and all.
Yeah.
You know where we live. Feel free. Sarah, many kind thanks. And it sounds like fabulous. Maybe we'll have you come back and do something a little bit more in depth for people who might be interested in seeing what you did. Everybody else have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to please reach out to us if you have questions. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. Good seeing
Bye-bye.
everyone.